For 22 years, he built TCU into a power, a two-time National Coach of the Year, six-time conference championship. Gary Patterson, the former TCU football coach, who both Lincoln Riley and Steve Sarkisian wanted to join their staff last year, and he chose the Longhorns. It is great to have you here, Coach. So there's a lot of things. One of the players in the draft that we've talked a lot about, there's this now narrative. You can't draft a running back first round. And to me, if somebody's great, you draft him. I watched Ezekiel Elliott at Ohio State. You can draft him. So Bijan Robinson at Texas, you were there with the program. Interestingly, you also had LaDainian Tomlinson, probably the best TCU player ever and one of the great running backs ever. Is there some LaDainian Tomlinson in Bijan Robinson?
Yeah, they're both. I tell you, number one, they're both great people. I think that's what they don't understand. Whatever city that they end up getting drafted to is going to be better just because what they're going to infuse into the city off the field. But yeah, they're both jump cut. They both catch the ball. They both are students of the game. You know, I still remember a story about LT where he would always try to be the first person in the building at San Diego when he was a rookie, and he always wanted to wait until he was the last one to leave. He wanted to be able to prove that he was a worker, and Bijan's the same way. He's always around. You know, and he's always giving back, whether it's on the field. He was at the spring game, you know. So, yeah, both of them are great jump cut. They have this amazing ability to be able to see the holes and not the hole. And so, I like both of them a lot. They were great players.
A player that J-Mac and I have talked about is Max Duggan, the quarterback. You had Andy Dalton. He's more athletic than Andy. I don't know if he's the pocket presence. When you look at Max, I watched Brock Purdy, who Iowa State.
Yes.
And so there's some comps there where they're smart guys. I think Max is probably a little better mover than Brock Purdy. What is he as a pro, do you think?
Well, he's a winner. I think that's the same thing with Brock Purdy. It's he wasn't going to be flashy, but he was taught well. I think Max Duggan's best days are ahead of him. And if you listen to all the players that talk about him, they run through walls for him. You know, there's just that element to a Max Duggan. He's going to run in the 4.5s. He can take off and beat you with his legs. He runs like a running back, and he's
good enough arm.
Yeah, he has a good enough arm. You know, they threw for a lot of yards, had a good enough player. You know, I think in the passing game, he's just going to keep getting better and better because of what they did in high school, and then what we did early in his career running the football. You know, and he had to play. As a redshirt freshman, come in and play. Had the heart condition, so he couldn't practice through the first year, and so he's kind of probably about a year behind when it comes to all that kind of stuff in his development.
So I want to talk about Bryce Young because last year Texas outplayed Alabama, and Bryce did his magic late. So when you went up against Bryce Young and you helped Sark and you looked at film, what jumped off film? What made Bryce Young special?
Well, I think he just makes great decisions, and he can beat you by himself. I think that's why you go through his career, you just watch him. You think you have him. We thought we had him.
You did. Yeah.
We thought we had him, and then in the final drive, he comes down, he makes the corner miss, he sees the guy outside, and they get the first down, they kick the field goal, and go. He's just a guy, and twice I think in that drive, he took off running, where he got the first downs when he hadn't really done that the whole ball game, and so he just beats you in so many ways, and he's definitely a student of the game. I think I've read about the tests he's taken up at the NFL.
S2 scores.
Oh, yeah, the S2 scores. I mean, it's truly incredible how smart the young man, and I've heard coaches talk about that.
So you saw Patrick Mahomes before the rest of the world was introduced to Patrick Mahomes. His dad was a Major League Baseball player, so good lineage there. Could you have ever imagined – I mean, you were a defensive guy. You were in the Big 12, which is a wild, spread-them-out conference. So everybody scores on everybody, no matter how good of a defensive coach you are. But with Mahomes, was there a moment for you in his college career where you turned to guys and said, oh, my God, that kid's different?
Well, yeah, his first ball game was against us. He had to come in as a freshman. The starting quarterback got hurt there at TCU. But if you watched him develop and you didn't know how well he ran, number one, and how he could ad-lib all the different ways he throws the ball and goes about his business. It's as a defensive coach, it's just so hard to prepare for somebody that's not going to do one thing twice. And I think that's what he's doing at the NFL level now. He did it at the college level, And I think he's even doing it better at the NFL level than he did at the college level. But Cliff did a great job coaching him there, and Andy Reid's done an unbelievable job with his group at Kansas City. You would have thought Kansas City, he would have had a down year, right? And he just took another step.
So when you look at the state of Texas in football, in California, and then Florida, all the regions are different. I've always thought California is very good for receivers, quarterbacks. It's a progressive place. It's a thinking person's football. I think at Texas, it's a little tougher. High school football means more. Then you get to the South, and it's just between Florida, Georgia, Louisiana. That's where a lot of the players are. When you recruited California, I guess my question being is, you can only win so many games unless you're great at quarterback. Is quarterback play? It looks like to me it's getting better. The guys are smarter, earlier, better. You tell me in 22 years what you saw.
Well, yeah, I think if I go back 20 years, I thought California had the lead in that because the way they threw the ball on the West Coast, they had 7-on-7s. Texas was a running quarterback, early in my career. Now the quarterbacks, they have all the 7-on-7s. They're developing quarterbacks really across the nation. Everybody's doing the same thing. I think the quarterback play in college football and going forward into the NFL, I think finding the guy that can win. I think it's not just about how can you transition from 7-on-7 to 11-on-11 and not see the rush and have that innate ability to throw the ball where nobody else can get it. I think is the ones if you look at the quarterbacks that are playing right now that have played in the last 5 years, and then the ones coming up, I think they all have that unique ability.
The transfer portal. I like it because I think it allows a Brian Kelly or a Lincoln Riley, by the second year, you're ready to compete with the big boys. It used to be even Nick Saban. It took like 3 full recruiting classes. But the transfer portal also, the downside to it is, kids face a little adversity. I'm out of here. And I think there's something to be said that if you look at most great NFL players, they had obstacles. I mean, Tom Brady drops in the draft. So did Joe Montana. So did Russell Wilson. So did Aaron Rodgers. So did Dan Marino. Yeah. Where are you on the transfer portal? Let's forget the NIL because that's still the wild, wild west. But in the transfer portal, do you like it? Are you concerned about it? Where are you on it?
Well, number one, I think every freshman, when they get to college, it's a lot harder. Every freshman has thought about transferring. But, I think there's, like anything else, there's good transfers and there's guys that probably shouldn't have left because nobody talks about all the numbers that don't get those scholarships you'd like to have, right? But I would tell you this. It used to be a 3-year turnaround for, you develop. Now it's a 1 year. I think I saw on a TV copy where Chip Kelly talked about it. It's a 1 year. Now how do you put your pieces of your team together in 1 year in the transfer portal? Who you go get somebody, which you usually used to be able to not do that.
Right.
You had to recruit, and then you were and if you ever came into a situation to where your team wasn't good, in the old days, you had to wait for your freshman to grow up and maybe get a junior college guy. Now it's if you've got the means, and you have done a good job evaluating, you can go find the players and they'll come. So I think it's a whole different game now.
Who is the best coach, the best game coach? If I go back and say, Gary, who was arm wrestling? Who was a really clever chess player to go up against on a Saturday?
Well, there's been a lot of through 40 years of college football. There's been a lot of them, but the new guys. Lincoln, obviously 2 guys we just talked about.
Lincoln was a handful.
Yeah, if you look at what Lincoln, as far as because they run, one of the things that I had to do in defense, you had to get to where you played plays now, because these guys run so many plays. They run so many plays. It's just not where you're running the read zone or now they're running plays. So you have to be able to look at formations and be able to. So here's the plays they're going to run out of this, and this is the routes they're going to run.
So the substitution patterns, you're on the sideline.
It's really big. It's really big knowing the personnel. And that's why you see so many of the offenses now when they're in 11 personnel, meaning they have a 1 tight end, 1 back system with 3 wideouts. They're either in a 4 wideout look because the tight end split out, or he's on the line of scrimmage, or he's back in the backfield as a 2-back. And so now defenses have to change so that you actually have to call defenses like offenses. So when they're in that 10 personnel, here's the front you want, here's the coverages you want. When they're in the tight ends on, here's the plays they run because they're going to run they're going to run stretches to the tight end so they can pull their linemen. And then when the back's in the backfield, when that tight end's in the backfield, you get that 2-back running game. which in college you have, and I think you're starting to see that progress a little bit into the pro ranks where that tight end's coming around, but instead of blocking the end in a divide zone, he's now going up to the next level for the quarterback. So, yeah, the game is really changing, and it's changing not just by every 2 or 3 years. It's changing every year, and there's just a lot of good coaches now, and even young coaches that are coming up that have a lot of great ideas.
So Caleb Williams, I talked to an exec during last season, and he said Caleb Williams would be the number 1 pick this year. So he comes up for USC, Lincoln. He's got a little Mahomes to him where there's different arm angles. He's only 6'1", but he's thick. He's a thicker kid than like a Bryce Young. I don't know if you've seen tape. Obviously, Oklahoma. He's how much? I always think when I watch Caleb, how much do you coach him, Gary, and then how much do you let him just do what he does?
Well, I think probably Lincoln can answer that better. But those guys, you coach the play, but you don't coach the other part. Now, I did coach against him. Actually, he came in against Texas 2 years ago, and we were the next ball game at TCU, and the same thing had happened against Texas where we had the corner coming off the edge, and quarterback from Alabama, he makes a miss, right? And we had the same thing. We had the corner coming off the edge against Caleb, and we had him dead to right. He makes a miss, and he can't tackle him. So he's got what I call escapability. They all have escapability. And when you have a quarterback like that, that's at +1, whether it's scrambling or in the quarterback read option game, that makes it really hard on coaches because defensive coaches can play all this different coverage stuff when you have just a true drop back guy we're not worried about running.
Right.
But that guy will take off when you've got everybody chasing wide receivers and then he's going to run for 40 yards. It makes it awfully difficult because you got to change up, and the chances and the risk you're taking when you play certain coverages because that quarterback's going to make you pay if they don't keep him corralled. And that's why you also see not as many sacks sometimes against those running guys because instead of trying to beat you and come off the edge and beat the tackle, they have to push the pocket.
Right.
And then you're getting a coverage sack, but you're not getting a run by him sack. And so all those things play a part into how you play the game.
Sark, you go there and you add a dimension for his staff. What is something? I think Sark's a great recruiter. I think he's sometimes his teams are a bit loose, but he plays with energy. He takes in-game risks, which I like. What did you try to add to Texas and Sark last year?
Well, for me, I went down, kind of take a step back. Number one, I went back and tried to learn, after 25 years of being at TCU. And so I tried to help them defensively kind of put things together. Pete did a great job, great staff. And really tried to give chemistry to the building. They'd only been there 1 year, and they kind of came in during COVID. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was about helping the analysts and all the GAs and everybody in the back of the room evaluate.
Structurally.
Recruiting, just wherever, kind of be a glue, try to be wherever they needed me. I love the staff. I love Sark. Sark was great to me, and I love the players. I think the one thing people understand is how good a kids Texas has on their roster as far as people. I would like a Bijan Robinson, a Roshan. There's just a lot of those guys there, and I was really happy. It was really hard for me to step back and not go back this season in the position that I was a year ago. But I was glad I did it. The fans and everybody treated me great. RG3
did the spring game on TV for Texas. He said he thinks they can compete for the title. Can they? Do you believe they have the personnel?
Well, I think with the freshmen coming in, I think the biggest thing competing for a title is going to have to be depth. I think if they can stay healthy, I think that Alabama game is going to be a big game just because of perception.
Yes.
Of playing well, either winning or playing them close. Because I watched Alabama later in the year play against Kansas State, which we played in the bowl game. So I think that's really important. But I think that they have an opportunity because they started 3 freshman offensive linemen last year.
Yeah.
All those grow up. They've added some really good skilled players. They lost some running backs, but they've got some good young running backs. And I think their wide receiver core and the quarterback, it's still like anything else. It comes down to either the quarterback making a difference at Texas because if you're going to win a national championship, it's really going to come down to the quarterback play and playing good defense. So we got better on defense last year, and I think they'll play the same or better this year.
Gary Patterson, great seeing you. 22 years here at Fox. Appreciate you stopping by, Coach.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.